Hello, hello, everyone. And we are here once again with a Light Song podcast. I am Karen Hefner, and Jan Engels-Smith, our beloved founder, is with us today, who probably needs no introduction, but I'm going to do some anyway. Jan is the founder of Light Song School of 21st Century Shamanism and Energy Medicine. She has been an unbelievable force in the world for love and for education and for healing, and has created a beautiful community and created a beautiful curriculum and programs that people can become a part of for a bachelor's, master's, doctoral in shamanism and energy medicine. And she's now shifting her gears and becoming more of a worldwide messenger for all of the goodness and the healing. She's becoming a regular on Gaia and presenting around the world, while the school is still doing the beautiful work and teaching the classes with integrity. And so I want to welcome Jan.
Hi, Karen. Hi, Sarah.
Hi. And I'm also welcoming Sarah Marie Livings to our podcast today. Sarah Marie is the newest council member on the Light Song School of 21st Century Shamanism and Energy Medicine Council that helps guide the school and listen to the community, listen to what's happening, and assisting in adding and spreading this amazing teaching around the world. And she has a business, lives in McMinnville, and has a business called Apothic Energy, and is a beautiful healer and teacher in her own right. And so we welcome you, Sarah Marie.
Thank you. So good to be here.
Welcome back, actually. We did a podcast together. And so today we have come together, and we're very excited about this because we are going to be talking about soul retrieval. We're going to be talking about the concept of soul retrieval, but more, we are going to focus specifically on the soul retrieval training as it is delivered as a part of the Light Song curriculum. And so Jan is the holder of that curriculum, the creator, and the person who has listened and brought that lineage into our school and into our training. And our training is always initiatory, always experiential. And the stories around the creation of this soul retrieval training are fascinating. And so I'm going to be enjoying this podcast as well as all of you listeners as we listen to Jan's origin story of soul retrieval for Light Song. So Jan, take
Well,
it away.
why don't you start? Do you have a question for me? So I know where you want me to start.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've done podcast work for you. We've known one another well over 20 years. The listeners can access podcasts that can introduce them to your story, to the experience that you had with an apparition in Texas when you lived in Texas many years ago and had little babies, and what happened during that initiation for you, which then brought you to the Pacific Northwest.
Right.
And there are many other stories that we're continuing to tell as well. But I know that you coming to the Pacific Northwest was a huge step in the beginnings of creating Light Song as a community and as a school. And so you had mentioned something about being in almost like a spiritual research seeker place, trying to find answers around that experience that you had with the apparition, and that is what initially brought you to soul retrieval. So can you start there and describe that story?
Yes, of course. And you're giving it a flavor of um, kind of logic or intention that actually wasn't there at the time. After I had that apparition, my life fell apart. It was a complete dismemberment. It was a, and I invite people to listen to that. I'm not going to repeat the story, but it's on several podcasts. It's written in my book as well as Shamanism for the New Millennium. It's a feature story in there where they have um, awakening stories of, I think, 25 different shamans around the world. So it's a story that's gotten a lot of airtime. It's a very important story. Um, but what happened at the end of that, it was so altering for me, and as many awakenings are, that my life started to fall apart because I just didn't fit anymore in my old life. My friends were desertingly, luckily my husband did not, but I was saying things that were hard to believe. And at the time, I was also working in the disassociative ward. I was a psychotherapist. And so that just kind of added a flavor to things of being unstable. And I was sad. I was very sad. Um, I'm a extremely social person, and I love my friends. And to have them abandon me was heartbreaking. It was really heartbreaking. Somewhere in there, I had a dream, and in the dream, just a voice said, "You're to move to the Northwest," that the vortexes were changing in the United States from the Southwest to the Northwest, and that I was to be there. I didn't know what a vortex was. I didn't know anything at this time. I was coming directly out of the Methodist Church, very, very strong. I'd always been a church lover, had even thought about getting my doctorate in theology. I loved it. Um, and so all the maybe what we would call new age, even though they're not terminology, I didn't have a reference to any of that. So vortex, I didn't know what that meant, but they just said, the vortexes are changing and you need to be there. So luckily, I have had a wonderful husband. He has since passed, but he was willing to explore that option with me. And we moved up to Portland. They didn't necessarily say Portland, it was just the Northwest. But my best friend, my childhood best friend, had moved to Portland, and I thought it was a perfect place to go. We were at a conference with my husband's work. I was upstairs with the kids, and I don't remember their ages, but I remember the twins were in the stroller, so they were pretty little. He came into the room and said, "There's this really interesting collection of books downstairs." They were having like different vendors coming in, showing different things, and there was bookstores there. He said, "You might really be intrigued with some of their titles and things." So I went down there, pushed my stroller, and all of the three little kids. And they were books on reincarnation and angel channeling. Um, Shamanism was there, things that I had never heard of or knew anything about. I went to the clerk and I said, "Do you happen to know anything about visions or apparitions?" And she said, "I don't personally, but I know somebody that could probably help you." And I said, "Great." And she handed me a card with this lady's phone number on the back of it, who I called immediately and set up an appointment. And it turned out that she channeled angels. I was like, okay, whatever that means. But I went to this appointment and I was just blown away. She went into this altered state and just started telling me not only about this experience that I had, but about my spiritual lineage, so to speak, who I was as a spiritual being. She got up and walked over to a shelf and grabbed a book and brought it over to me. And it was a book on soul retrieval. And she said, "This is your life." And she handed me the book. Oh, I got chills right now. And the book was by Sandy Ingeman. And Sandy at the time was active in doing soul retrievals and had a private practice. And she also worked for the Foundation of Shamanic Studies with Michael Harner. When I was reading the book, I was not only fascinated, but there was such a familiarity to it. It's like I had written it. It's like, why do I know this? As they were, as things were being described, it was like I knew what was going to be at the end of the sentence before I read it. It was just like these downloads of almost memories were coming in. So by the time I finished it, at the end of the book there was an address there for the foundation, and I contacted them and went to their training. And there's always a story that I tell in the um, level one, because the shamanism is all based in journeying. And I was so bad. I went I went to 3 workshops where at these times they were mostly in California. So I had to buy a plane ticket, rent a car, get the hotel room, pay for the event, and I just had no experience, none. I didn't have any success in journeying that I thought, but I kept going. I just kept going. And why did I keep going? I don't know, because I was so bad. But I think in the back of my mind was I was hearing this woman say, "This is your life." And I was like, well, I got to, if this is my life, I got to figure out how to do this. Um, and so I plugged away with it, and went through all of their training, everything that they offered. In fact, I still get together with some of those people. There tended to be folks that would started the programs the same time you did, so you develop these friendships. But we were the 5th graduating class on the West Coast of the foundation, and we're having I think our 26th reunion or 25th reunion this year. So we still get together. There's a handful of us, maybe about 10 or something, that still get together once a year. But anyway, I went through all of their training, and was exposed to not only soul retrieval, but um, all the different divination processes. At that time, there was no training at the foundation for compassionate or for depossession. But Betsy Bergstrom was in my class with me, and she was teaching Michael during our classes how to do it. so, so there was we came out of a very I guess lineagely experienced group, that had all gathered together. So it was interesting to see how all that unfolded. Do you want me to stop there or continue, or what would you like me to do?
Oh, I can listen to you tell the stories I tell. So you went through the foundation process,
Hmm.
including the soul retrieval training for the
Oh yeah,
foundation.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I went through Sandy at the time. She was also very taken with this. In fact, when she did her first, well, she was doing a journey and thought that she invented soul retrieval. She was kind of shown how this was done. And of course, again, this is 30 years ago or so, and things were brand new in the United States. You just didn't hear much of this at all. and
Mm-hmm.
she was working with Michael, and it wasn't connected to other people around that were doing this type of journey work. And Sandy, is well known. I mean, she has been sort of the lead authority on soul retrieval for a long time, and she wrote a beautiful book, and it has um, referenced and and been a good reference for many many people. And so I took that training from her probably about 5 times. And then we also we did a 2 week intensive, and Soul Retrieval was part of that. And we also did the 3 year program, and Soul Retrieval was part of that. So I was constantly being exposed to it. And then Sandy asked me to be her assistant in classes. So then I was now assisting her in Soul Retrieval also. So I had a lot of training experience, as well as I had a psychotherapy. I was a psychotherapist when I moved to Portland, and I could never um, get things set up for that private practice at my house. Now, again, I had 3 small children, so I was trying to figure out how to um, uh, do things out of my home and set this practice up, so I could be sort of a stay-at-home mom that was working, in my office. And I was doing soul retrievals on the side. Well, actually, primarily at that time, because I didn't have a practice set up, but my intention was to set up my practice. But I was doing a lot of soul retrievals. My first experience with bringing it out to people, a woman had invited me to her book club to talk about what had happened. Or they had read the book Soul Retrieval, and they wanted to know more about it. So she had invited me to come speak, and I went and spoke, and everybody there at the book club signed up for a session. There was like 10 of them. And from that point on, I was booked out for the rest of my career, always. Sometimes people were waiting 4 months to get in for, and I was trying to do, 2 a day, which was crazy. And the sessions are long, they're about 3.5, 4 hours sometimes. And so I was working all day doing these things. And um, I just started developing a tremendous amount of experience. And so, but going back a little bit, when I was first starting off, I did a journey to the spirits, and I said, why am I not able to get set up for my psychology um, office? I mean, I couldn't find furniture, I couldn't find a layout, I couldn't get anything off the ground. And they said, we don't want you to do that. We want you to do everything in shamanism. And what I had found as a psychotherapist was that, I was never wanting to do long term psychology. I just thought that there needed to be a better answer. I didn't see why it took so long for people to heal. I didn't want to see people long term. I didn't, want, I don't want to see you for a year. I want to make progress. I want to see you fly and be really healthy. And so I knew already that, soul retrieval took years off of therapy. Doesn't make you a therapist, but it takes years off of therapy.
Exactly.
And I would often have, in my tenure, I would have therapists come with their clients to my sessions. But anyway, when the spirit said, we don't want you to do that, we want you to set it up to do soul retrieval, in one afternoon, I had the whole thing set up. you know, everything that I needed. And so I just said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to do it professionally instead of on the side like I had been doing it, you know, in the evening or, you know, again, I had three little kids. And
Well, and that willingness that you had to say yes
mm-hmm,
is one of the beautiful things for me about you, why you've been my teacher and mentor for over 20 years, is because that is what you do. You listen to that guidance and you say yes, whether it's convenient or not.
mm-hmm,
Um, and no matter what it looks like.
mm-hmm,
And so in that saying yes is the teaching that the spirits then were able to do with you through the soul retrieval experience itself,
mm-hmm,
which I know that that's where your curriculum came from.
mm-hmm,
That's where the training came from that I experienced so many years ago
mm-hmm,
was, the foundation that you got, the steps and the understanding that you got from Sandra, the excellent training that was to be had in that.
mm-hmm,
But you saying yes and then just doing thousands of soul retrievals and listening to the spirits guide you
mm-hmm.
is what then allowed all the rest of actually the curriculum at Light Song probably to unfold.
Right, right. That's exactly right. So as soon as I said yes to them and set things up, that's when I then got the invitation to go to the books book sign or book club, and my everything took off. And as you're saying, I think to date I've done about 3,500, which is, you know, just an enormous amount. And the thing that was important to me, and I guess it's from my science background as well as my psychotherapy, is I investigate things. I always say too, my dad was a detective. I learned how to ask questions and investigate things like, why is this happening? What's happening here? What, da, 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 and just probe into um, it, the experiences. And I found them fascinating. I would document and have always documented every single one that I did. Not so much as the journeys. The journeys are kind of a personal experience of images for you, but it's the message. It's how things work and what I was learning in the process. And so it was from them that I actually learned that you could go into another lifetime and do a soul retrieval. Now that was never taught to me, you know. Like, no, you did a soul retrieval of an event that took place. It was very matter of fact. It was event based. Um, you could go, they taught me that you could go to creation point and change creation points, or bring back uh, energies from your creation point. That you could do healings in another lifetime that would affect you here, as well as changing karmic um, cycles or imprints. That you could, you know, just about everything that you bring up, except for the basic things of bringing back a soul piece from this lifetime from an event, has been things that the spirits have taught me, because that was what the core of it was that I learned, and then the spirits taught me differently. Yeah, Sarah Marie.
This is the piece that I'm most fascinated by, because it feels funny to say, because in shamanism we talk about um, time and space not really existing, everything happening at once. But somehow you've been able to evolve your original training to be even more multidimensional. You've somehow brought in this next level understanding of the expansiveness of our soul and the importance to be paying attention not only to what's happening in this lifetime, understand that so many other things are also happening alongside of us.
Yes.
And I think it's broadening not only our awareness of ourselves, but also the awareness of where we stand in general in the spiritual realms. The spirits have, and under your teaching, have showed me that we are just not the only things happening. And it's really important to recognize and realize that there are many other entities and beings that we are in coexistence with. And as we are healing ourselves at a soul level through soul retrieval, we are bringing ourselves to a place where we have the capacity to understand what that means. And in that way, be in greater harmony with the soul of our planet.
Yes, and that the soul of the planet is an incarnated being too.
I remember that being a bit of a mind twist for me when you started talking about the earth as a divine being
Mhm.
and as being, more than just that was sharing, her elements so that we could have our form, right? We think of Mother Earth, but to also think of her as a divine teacher was something a little bit different.
Mhm.
And to, when we're bringing in the concept of soul retrieval, us being these little pieces of the larger whole, and that the really big push right now is for all of those little pieces to come into cohesiveness. The
Yeah,
soul retrieval of the planet is us.
can be for sure. That's one part of it. And I think for me, the big teaching that came in from the spirits around the core of what you're talking about, Sarah, is when they really started telling me about the left brain, right brain.
Mm.
And that teaching from them was so profound because what my training had been and what I listened to other people, they approach shamanism from a left brain um, structure. And it's not a left brain, it's an energy structure of oneness, which only can be experienced in the right brain. And when they gave me then the tool in how to shift that, how to really be consciously aware of moving from one side of the brain to the other, that then allowed me to um, not try to logically figure things out, because that logic in figuring things out can be a stumbling block because it's not logical.
Mm-hmm.
It's an energetic allness, and we differentiate things, we categorize things in order to understand. The other thing that was taught, not so much from Sandy, but a lot of other people would get this confused, is in soul retrieval, they might say, well, your 10-year-old came back and your 2-year-old came back and da 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 da. And so typical experiences of people, they would plop it into a psychological framework of inner child work, which we've been exposed to, or some people in our culture have been exposed to. It was a kind of the name of the game in the 90s and early 2000s. And they would be identifying with this soul piece at that age. That soul piece has nothing to do with that age. It's divine essence that left at that age. Okay. But you're not getting back a 10-year-old. You don't have to act like a 10-year-old. You don't have to honor a little 2-year-old in playing, which became very confusing. Um, because again, it's people trying to fit it into a left brain sort of what we know psychologically, and it has nothing to do that. It's a divine essence that is ageless from all your other lifetimes. It's part of your signature. It's who your what your signature is, that is immortal. That's what you're getting back, and any qualities that that holds. Um, and so I think what you're talking about is like trying to conceptualize something that you hold within you, like in shamanism, and also in indigenous cultures, but shamanism throughout the world. The idea is that you are the universe. Well, our little left brain goes, it cannot comprehend that. It cannot comprehend that. But in truth, that's what it is, that it's all contained within, and you are all that is, but we're constantly differentiating, categorizing. That's what the left brain does. It categorizes. The experience of doing more and more soul retrievals is that it kind of blows the top off of our concepts if you don't try to categorize them in the soul retrieval. Now, some practitioners will do that too, but it doesn't have anything to do with ages or yeah.
Well, and like all of the healing and the teaching that happens for us at Light Song, we know it's based in intention. And that is the huge driving factor in a soul retrieval ceremony. It's the first thing you teach us to do, is to sit and work with the client on what their intention is, what they want to get back.
That's right.
So it is possible, and we know we can do a soul retrieval on a body part. We can do that after there's been some physical trauma in a person's life, right? And we can, in fact, go to when that person was at a particular age and had an experience or trauma and return that divine essence. But like you're saying, the divine essence has no limitation of what it was and when it was and where it was. It's just pure. And coming back, and the way you teach soul retrieval, we bring that back. Well, we don't. Our allies that we're working with bring that back and make sure that it's cleansed and cleared and at its highest vibration, because at the most basic healing protocol is we take out what doesn't belong and put in what does. And so in soul retrieval, we're asking to return that divine essence, the signature, the song, the the beauty that is that person. And one of the things that I find amazing in all of my experience of soul retrieval is that there is never a soul retrieval that happens twice, right? They are all so beautifully and uniquely different with regards to the unique human being sitting across from you and the healing story that comes about. Very different. And so that makes it really interesting because we're getting informed at the same time that we're doing a healing. And so, in the evolution of the soul retrieval training at Light Song, in your creation of the curriculum, um, one of the things that I'd like to hear more about is how the initiatory piece from Isis came through, and how that became and evolved into a piece of the soul retrieval training.
Before I answer that, I want to go back to something that you just said, and you can choose to keep this in the recording or not, or because it's. I just want to bring awareness to how we think of ourselves. Okay. And we think of ourselves as flawed or needing cleaning up or there's something wrong. Okay. So we're using words. I'm going to bring back divine essence and clean it up. Right there. There's no clean. If we had an idea of what divine meant, we would know that there is no cleaner than divine. Okay. But yet we go through this verbiage like we do, like you said, to help a person be able to accept that it's not out there damaged. okay? Because
That-
they've got this concept of being damaged.
right.
We all carry that concept with us of being damaged.
And that's what helps them understand that they're not bringing back some 10-year-old self of this lifetime.
That's wounded or that was molested or that was whatever.
Yeah.
So we go through this verbiage of being cleaned up.
Mhm.
But where the spirits are today, and this is what's coming in this year's practicum already, is that we have to stop that. We have to start really claiming and understanding what divinity means and that our soul is divine and there's no cleanup. So I just wanted to throw that in
I
because,
have a mhm.
yeah, because we can see that we're still, even with all this experience, all this stuff, we're still trying to wrap our minds around divine essence. And it's what we're made of. But our left brain does not get that. Yeah. Go ahead, Sarah.
Well, what feels important to also bring into this part of the conversation is part of your curriculum includes aspect maturation and how when we're working with returning soul pieces, a lot of times there's resistance to allowing it to come back. And a lot of times it's the egoic construct that was created when that piece of you left. And it's essentially the story that we are healing. That it's not the soul piece that's being healed, as you've said. It's more our understanding of what happened when that piece of us left.
Right.
And a lot of times there's really beautiful insight around why that soul piece chose to leave. One of my favorite things that Pamela has ever said in a soul retrieval class was a lot of times soul pieces leave because they're intolerant of the circumstances. It's not because they're wounded or fragile and they need to like escape. It's because something's happening that they're just not accepting and they're leaving until the circumstances change. And then when they come back, they're bringing back to you all of these attributes and qualities that have gone missing or are pieces and parts of you that have gone away that once they come back they're restoring back to you. So it's not just divine essence, it's also like skill sets, it's ways of thinking, it's memories of other lifetimes where you have lived in your divinity, in your joy, in your power.
That's right.
So that feels like a significant part of what we're talking about too.
Yes, it's very much a significant part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we can go on and on, but let me bring us back to Karen's question, which was the initiatory part of the practitioners at Lightsong. Now, this is not anybody else that does it this way, okay? Um, and it was because of my own experience of working with Soul Retrieval and my particular teacher for my spiritual teacher that I got in level 1, like everybody else gets their teachers, was Isis. Okay. Isis is an Egyptian goddess. When I did my regalia training, I decided, or Isis wanted to be represented. The intention of that representation that we were given by Michael Harner was to tell a story about their life, your teacher's life. When I was journeying for that story and working with Isis, she said, "Well, I want you to tell the story about me and Osiris." And I was like, "Well, everybody knows that story. Anybody knows that story." Most of the audience is going, "I don't know that story." But anyway, there's a very famous story. If you looked into any type of Egyptian mythology, the story of Isis and Osiris is a common one that is told about. And very much shortening the story, Osiris is Isis's twin brother and also her husband. And through a jealous act, their other brother, Seth, killed Osiris and chopped him up into 12 pieces and scattered him all over the cosmos. Isis, in her grief, gathered all the pieces up and tried to put them back together again, but she couldn't find the penis. Darn. So she constructed one out of gold, and they were able to then conceive their son Horus out of a divine conception, which is, when you look at it through the myth stories, it's the first story of Mary and Jesus. You know, that Horus is the child that was the divine conception, just as Jesus. And Isis is the rendition of Mary in the Christian. Um, Mary was modeled after Isis. Um, and so those stories are very synonymous. And when Isis told me that I needed to tell this story, I was like, Isis, everybody knows this story. I mean, I need something different to tell. And she said, but you don't know the story, Jan. I was like, what do you mean I don't know the story? I've read it, I've read it, I've read it. And she says, no, you don't know the story. I said, okay, what's the story? And she said, that gathering of those pieces was the first soul retrieval. I am the mother of the soul retrieval process. And I just fell over. You know, it was like, oh my God, this has been right in front of me all these years. And I never put two and two together because she was such an avid, you know, being in my soul retrieval process. My teacher was always helping me. Now, what I've learned through the process of doing, um, you know, so many years of this work is the spirits are consistently bringing ceremony to us, healing ceremonies to us to use to help us with our healing experience. I mean, our being human, to heal as humans. We're pretty fragile as far as they're concerned. And so this was the beginning of that process. Now, soul retrieval, according to National Geographic, is one of the oldest known healing modalities on the planet. They date it back 100,000 years, you know, from petroglyphs and various things. In fact, I have some of these petroglyphs, two of them anyway, in my office that are showing the soul retrieval process with the energy coming in, the shaman working with the person, the community standing off on the side, and various things like that. Well, they're, you know, I don't even think as humans being around 100,000 years, and yet they're dating this back that far. And so we take it for granted that it always was. But it's like, no, I brought it to you guys. I gifted you this ceremony so that you could take care of yourselves. And I have been, you know, in the process of working with the spirits, I've been working with bringing in ceremony that sometimes takes years. I mean, there is one ceremony that I brought in that took about 7 years for it to really drop in. And they would just give me little bits and pieces of it. But the point being is when the ceremonies come in, they're gifts to humanity. Okay. And then you'll have certain people that will be the intermediaries for that. They'll be the ones that are going to work the sort of the procedures of the ceremony, but you become an initiate of the being, whoever was the master creator of that. You become an initiate of that lineage. Okay, this is the lineage of soul retrieval, the lineage of um, the Egyptian forgiveness ceremony. And there's other ones. I mean, we have all different kinds of lineages. Probably the most common right now that I think of in the United States is the Reiki lineages. The lineages from Dr. Yasui and the various people that are bringing in these ceremonies from spirit, and then it develops a lineage of teachings around that. Um, and and so it's not necessarily the culture, it's the spiritual connection of the process that's happening. It's like, what are you doing and who are your allies that you're working with. um, and I don't know anybody that has. I mean, I was shocked when I got that information. I've never heard that from anybody, and I know lots of people that have worked with Isis for years. I've been to all kinds of Isis temples and ceremonies, and never has it been um, expressed that she did that process for us. you know so I was very blown away with that information, as well as, like, oh, this is what you want to happen. And so once I got it, she said, yes, they are my initiates, and they will then, when you're initiated then into this process, you then carry the lineage. It's like you're tuned into it, an attunement to it, that then gives it a certain power. Like, yep, you can do Reiki with it never being attuned, or you can get an attunement, and it's like you're plugging into an outlet of, of power. And so it's the same thing with this. When you get attuned in this particular way through this lineage, it's like plugging into a certain power that comes through.
Well, in my understanding, or at least my interpretation, my definition of the word initiation is that you're being taken from one state of being to another state of being. And so I travel to Egypt, and I have been initiated by Isis in her soul retrieval. And I see through those lens. The and so on all the walls of the temples, we go in and we look at the story of Isis and Osiris unfold across the temple walls. And then you can see in every temple over and over people getting soul retrievals. You watch that, watching the person, the leaders at the time take the form and shape and shapeshift into Isis and put their hands on people in these reliefs. And you can see that soul retrieval process happening over and over again. And so it's a part of the initiation and an initiatory process and training that does in fact shift your ability to see, your perception of what it is you're seeing and how you're seeing. Which is funny when I think about it, because just before we started recording this call, we were talking about one of the things that Isis asked you to do. And that was a literal changing for you. Do you want to tell that that
Yeah,
story?
it was just sort of goofy in a way, but she always appears to me in this very vibrant cobalt or sapphire blue, very bright, striking blue. And she asked me to wear those color contacts for a couple years, because she wanted me to see the world from a different perspective. And she did it by changing how it appeared to me. And I mean, the whole world was blue. It was like there was no other color. It was blue, you know? And it's weird what it does to your brain to just take everything else away and just make it one, and how that just affected me. And so I did it for 2 years. It was difficult because everything was distorted and everything. But yeah, just little things and repatterning our brains to repattern, quit looking at things the way that you see it. It's not necessarily true. You're, just, I don't know. She asks things of me and I just say yes. Okay. Are you sure? Okay.
That's one of the joys of you, Jan, is your willingness to say yes to those things. And there's lots of stories around that. And I know I personally, I mean, I don't know how many people I have talked to just recently because of all of this is up. We're doing your stories, we're listening, we're creating um, a history so that we have it to in our hands. And everyone I talk to will start with in their stories the story of being told you need to go see Jan for a soul retrieval story. And I've talked to people that were 12 years old and being taken to see you for a soul retrieval. My introduction into light song and this community, like many of us, came because I had someone, and it was my healer, Lori Krampitz, who was my massage therapist at the time. But I was going through breast cancer treatments, and she said, "You have to go see Jan Engels-Smith for a soul retrieval." And I didn't know what a soul retrieval was. And so the gift that you have given to my life and so many lives, the thousands of soul retrievals that you've done, it's breathtaking in scope. And then to create a beautiful curriculum with integrity and with heartfelt guidance that initiates people and allows them to have an experience and teaches them to then allow others to have an experience of this is truly one of the gifts of your life and one of the gifts of the Light Song School. And so I'm excited for anyone who's hearing us and listening to our voices right now because soul retrieval is available. This kind of healing is available, and that you have created a group of very highly trained practitioners with the ability to do this work. I know I'm one of them. I know Sarah Marie is one of them that are available, are available to anyone and everyone who's willing to say yes in this moment to that healing and to come and experience having their divine essence return to them.
Yeah.
And
I,
then others who are hearing my voice saying, "Oh, that sounds interesting. Maybe I'd like to learn that someday." And knowing that there's a place they can do that in a process, learning to journey, learning the tools, and moving through this place of becoming someone who has gone through the preparations and the initiations to then step into the soul retrieval class training.
Thank you for that, Karen. Even in my own training, when I went to sign up for soul retrieval, the spirit said no to me the first time, that I wasn't ready. Where I was getting my training, there wasn't a curriculum. You could just take classes as you uh, wanted to take them. There was like a psychological evaluation that needed to be filled out. But it was because of that first saying no to me that I needed other steps under my belt that I started getting the first parts of the type of curriculum that needed to be there. I have really, in my tenure of doing this, have unfortunately had to do a lot of cleanup work with others for various reasons. Um, and through the years, through, again, 3 decades, um, it became very apparent to me that the soul retrieval, to be ready for a soul retrieval, it's like you're becoming a doctor of the soul. That's what a shaman is, a doctor of the soul. Well, you don't, and working with the soul is a very, very, very important, ethically and karmically, job or procedure. You don't go into it haphazardly. So that at Lightsong, it's a pinnacle class. You don't get into soul retrieval training until you have been involved for years and you really know what you're doing, which I think has what has created our success rate so high with Lightsong, as well as, the you talk about integrity and the ethics, which is extremely high. We're not doing things just to do them, to make a buck or hang out a shingle. You're doing it because you've been highly trained and you've earned the right to do it. You've earned the status, so to speak. Um, and I believe that when people understand that this is a major healing event, it's not like you're going in for a massage. It's not like you're going in for acupuncture. You're going in for a soul retrieval. That is a major healing event. That it brings a quality of, healing essence to it that you just don't get anyplace else. It's a gift to you. It's a thing that was, um, a lineage of energy was coming through you to create a scenario that, um, has been like divinely ordered for you in your well-being. And I think all of those things are very, very important to bear in mind. I also want to inform the listener, because we've gone from receiving soul retrieval to soul retrieval training and, um, initiations and all that kind of stuff. If you come in for a soul retrieval, you're not going to get an initiation and you're not going to receive training. You are having a personal healing on you that is about you. It's just all about you and your other lifetimes, possibly, but it's about you. And all this other stuff that we're talking about is, to do with the training process.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that, Jan, just to make that clear. And one of the reason it takes years to get to the place to be invited to take the soul retrieval class is that through those years of training, you are going through healing after healing after healing, and you are building relationship with your allies. And that's all a part of that soul retrieval ceremony. So when you go to a practitioner that's been well trained, that's been trained by Lightsong, that person has put in years and years of their own work and their own healing and years of ceremony and initiations and building of relationship with that actual ceremony itself, with the soul retrieval ceremony and the beauty of that Isis lineage. And so I've been with Lightsong long enough, 22 years, so I know some of what you've had to do to get to where we are today. And I have deep appreciation for that. You've walked through a lot of fires and you have done a lot of cleanup to create what this is. And what this is an attempt to be sure that things are being done in a good way, that there is availability, support, healing, accountability.
Safety.
and safety, exactly,
Safety is
for
key.
people. And when they come to a practitioner, they know what they're getting. They know how that person has been trained and who they are.
Yeah. Thank you. That is exactly right. And all those things are important. Just think of it as like you're going in and you're going to work with a specialist, a doctor specialist in this field. And that's what you're getting when you come here. And so it's beautiful. I'm proud. I'm proud of the people that have come through and are now, practitioners. And I couldn't, they're who I go to. It's just like, yeah, I take it very seriously. I take it very seriously. And I know that I I know that it's now, and it's part of the future of the wellness of our communities and of our humanity, that we have to get back to the healing of the soul, the maintenance of, well, I say healing of the soul, like, but it's like the maintenance of the soul, uh, that when we can first say, oh, the first thing you need is a soul retrieval, and then this or that, I'll know that humanity is there. Because even with a broken bones, I've told this story before, but it's just well worth sharing. My daughter, one of my daughters, when she was 11, was riding her bike, and we live on an extremely steep hill, and it wasn't her bike, it was the neighbor's bike that she had come home to get some beads or something. She's little, she's in the summer, it's August, and she's doing beading with the girlfriends. Anyway, she takes off on this bike to go back down the hill and discovers that it doesn't have any brakes. So she's very steep hill, down the hill, hits the curb across the street, goes into a dive position with her hands, and breaks both arms 5 places. It's like they accordion in with brakes. Very serious, very, very serious. The doctor was able to set the bones without pins, but he said it's extremely precarious. They were supposed to, this was on August 29th. I remember because it was the day that Princess Di actually died. It was that night. And she was going to start school in a week. And he said, she can't go to school. She's casted like this. And he said, if she even gets bumped, you know, but she couldn't feed herself. She couldn't wipe her nose. She couldn't go to the bathroom. She couldn't do anything. She was casted. Um, but I started doing soul retrievals on those arms. And he said, she's going to be like this for, 3 months, 12 weeks. I started doing soul retrievals on those arms, on the tissue, on the muscles, on the cells, on the ligaments, on the bones, everything. Soul retrieval. Was doing so many soul retrievals. We went back to the doctor in a week for x-rays, and the x-rays came up, and I'm standing there, my daughter Alex and the x-ray technician were looking at it, and Alex started going, "Mom, you did it, Mom, and I was like, I don't see anything. And the technician goes, "There's only one break." And it was minor, and so all the breaks had healed. I mean, we were all just standing there flabbergasted, and the x-ray technician became a student. "What are you doing? What did you do?" I was like, "Well, I did so and I did submit those x-rays to the Foundation of Shamanic Studies, because they're always looking for visual proof of the healing work, because that's one of the things that it goes up against medical science. Well, where's your proof? Well,
Mhm.
okay, here's 10 breaks a week later, and we can only barely see one. That's pretty good proof.
That's good proof.
um, So it was, they were able to, they did not take her out of CAS. The doctors, her dad just wouldn't hear of it, but they did make them where she was in functional CAS and she could go back to school. I mean, she could move around and she could, and so to me, that's the power of soul retrieval. When you bring back that essence that was lost, of course, it's a major trauma. We lose our essence when we are traumatized. Often, it's a disassociative power that the human beings have. You're going to disassociate so you don't feel the full impact of the injury. But then nobody says, well, where does it go and how do you get it back? In psychology, we know that they disassociate, but nobody says, well, where does it go and how do you get it back?
Mm-hmm.
But in shamanism, that's what we say. Well, it's part of you. Where'd it go? It was there, now it's gone. Okay. When you bring that back, your self, your whole self, has full capacity then to put energy into that healing of the physicality. And so I was doing so many soul retrievals on her, she was able to move into this physical healing full throttle.
Right.
And it just happened. And people forget about that. Like if you have an operation, they're cutting your fields. They're cutting your fields of energy in your body, and that all needs to be put back together again. So there's this whole energetic body that is maintenanced through shamanism. And shamanism basically is two things: taking out and putting in, taking out and putting in, taking out. We have hundreds of different methods for doing that. Soul retrieval is a big putting in. But basically, that's what you're doing. You're taking out the things that don't belong there and putting back the things that do. When you keep that essence of yours maintained and strong and healthy, every part of you is going to be healthy,
Mm-hmm.
physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. But if you just fix the mental, or if you just fix the physical, or you just fix this and don't address the spiritual or the energy system, it'll always be a little faulty.
And even things that we experience in our lives that are not necessarily woundings or traumas, what you taught me in soul retrieval was that whole process of being at the moment of birth at a person and being able to capture the divine essence of the mother from the physical difficulty of birth, and the baby of that physical reality of being born. And I've had the honor of being at many births of children, some of my own grandchildren, and even Sarah Marie's little girl, Scarlett, and was able to be there as a practitioner and gather those parts and blow them back in so
Yeah.
that that beginning point is an easier transition, that birth process.
In fact, that's what that was called, a transitioner. You're transitioning the beginning of life and again at the end of life. I won't mention her name right now. You know her, Karen, but somebody passed away 2 days ago, and I'll tell you later. But got a call from that this person was in the hospital, and went down to check on them. They're unconscious, and when I got there, I just said, I'm going to do some work here, and the people that were in the room didn't know anything about anything, and I just said, excuse me, and you can stay here if you want, or you can leave, but I need to check in. Well, they didn't know what had happened. They were outside of their body, way outside of their body. There was more out than in, and their body was failing, was not going to be inhabitable. Um, and they were outside of their body going, what's going on? I'm trying to get back in my body. get me in. Now this person knew me, so they, Jan, get me into it's not going to happen. Body's failed. You had a major issue here. And so we did a soul retrieval right on that essence that was so out of the body, so that she wasn't going to be trying to get back in anymore, but it's time to go, called her power animals in. But as soon as she had understanding and quit resisting it, then she was ready to go, and it was all fine. And I'm making this much more. There was major life issues that were presented that finally got tended to. And here in the 11th hour, she experienced wholeness that will completely affect her next incarnation. Because that's another shamanic, how you die is going to affect everything.
That's beautiful. I'm glad you could be there.
Yeah,
Mm.
I mean, I was just like, and I was thinking about that because I will often, tell my students a lot of shamanism is behind the scenes. People don't know what you're doing, but you go in and you just, and I, in my early days, even even before I knew shamanism, I spent time in hospitals just tending people that I didn't know. I just walk in the room, just, it was just something. And I think it's that transitioner that, this is your life. This is what you do. This is who you are. That I
Mhm.
knew it before I knew anything else, and it's just like there is a transitioning process that needs to take place. And we're ushered in and we're ushered out. That is part of that lineage. Oh, very few, I mean, you are exceptional in that you know this stuff, and little Scarlett got that. My little grandchildren get it, but, it's like, yeah, babies need to be brought in. Birthing is a tough thing to do. It's hard to be born. And so we tend that soul. And when you can start them off that way, it's a good start to life.
Yeah. And a good end.
Yeah, a good end. I was very, very happy that I got to be there um, and get her in a place of let's go. You're quit resisting this. And as soon as she realized what was going on, it was like, oh, okay. But it's that startle reflex,
Hmm.
which causes disassociation.
Well, and it does throughout our lives. And so the soul retrieval has been a gift,
Hmm.
I know, for my life and for Sarah Marie's, and it's a beautiful thing to offer to others and watch as their life can unfold in a better way, as they're just in a place of more wholeness.
Hmm.
So I think this brings us to a good place to, I mean, we got a lot more, I know, but we're going to go ahead and bring this podcast to an end. And I want to say thank you, Sarah Marie, for coming and bringing all of who you are to
Yeah,
our circle.
great. Thank you.
And thank you, Jan. I will be forever grateful to you. You are a thing of beauty to me and to the world. So thank you, and thank you for spending this time. And for the listeners, I hope you can feel our hearts and feel what it is we are hoping for you, and that is a good and beautiful life of
Hmm.
well-being and wholeness and thriving. We are here if you have questions. Sarah Marie Livings with Apothic Energy. We have Jan Engels-Smith at Light Song. We have Karen Hefner also at Light Song and also Igniting Spirit. And we're here for you. And reach out and let us know that you're listening. We send you love and blessings and invite you to visit the Lightsong website at lightsong.net and give us a call. So, blessings on you all. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Karen.
You're
Beautiful.
welcome. And we will meet again.
Sarah. Yeah.
Aho.
Oh.